Hi, a huge warm welcome to today's panel talk on AI in relations to creative careers. We would like to start off by just introducing ourselves. We are two students in Year 11 at Cotham School in Bristol and are both studying creative subjects for our GCSEs.
I study interactive media, which helps me understand the benefits and also the cons of AI in the creative industries, which is why I'm excited to hear from the experts.
I study BTech drama and I hope to pursue a career in the creative industries in the future. So I'm very intrigued about learning what the panelists have to say about the creative careers and ethics of AI on this.
Before we ask our questions, I'd like the panelists to introduce themselves. Let's start with Fraser.
Hello, I'm Fraser. I'm a theatre and film director, and I also work a little bit in the kind of immersive arts area as well. As a director, I've worked in the West End internationally and on tour, and I also work a lot in education, working with young people. So it's really interesting to obviously have these young people with us today and to get their opinions and to guide this talk.
Haz?
I knew I was going to be next. I just knew it. Hi, guys. I'm Haz Dalal. I'm the co-founder of a production company called Hazimation. My background is directing and producing live action films. I've done two sci-fi films that were on Netflix. I did a show called Fast Lane and a thing called Descendants, which is on Disney Plus. And I direct video games as well. Most recently, a Fortnite game called Moontopia. So yeah, that's me.
And Amy.
Hello, my name is Amy and I work as a programmer on different types of games. So I'm currently working at a studio called Sumo Leamington on a cool game called Stampede as a junior programmer, and I'm doing some freelance gameplay programming on the side. So yeah, that's what I do.
Right. Haz, I got a question for you. Do you think AI can ever truly be creative? Or is it just remixing ideas that were already there to begin with?
Well, first off, have any of you seen the t-shirt or the meme that everything is a remix? Okay. So if you look at every idea, it's a remix. But on a serious note, no, AI is literally a tool, right? That's a big thing you've got to remember. It's at the moment, it's using something called stable diffusion, which is the algorithm system that uses to go online and rip images from various sources online in order to create what you've typed in the text prompt, right? So it's a very interesting way to explore, but it's just a tool set. I've seen some very clever people by using AI to type in the text prompts, create images, then they paint on top of it, or they use it as an idea to present to someone, this is what I'm thinking, and then they go off and build it properly afterwards. So yeah, I mean, it is kind of a remix, but art is kind of a remix if you look at it. If you look at every music that's ever come out, it's either a cover or inspired. Look at every movie. A lot of movies have a lot of similar sort of like tropes, like you have the first act, which is like set up the problem, set up the issue, and in the middle act the characters get to know each other, and in the third act they solve the problem, they get together. There's always that common trope. So that's kind of how I'm seeing how AI is responding at the moment. It's trying to find all the similar things that we see in games, music, books, and trying to give us a result. But we're going to talk a bit more about the ethical things, but at the moment that's kind of where I'm seeing it. Amy, what do you think? You think similar things as well?
Well, yeah, I guess so. With AI image generation, I agree with that. But when it comes to text generation, it really is just scraping the internet and mushing stuff together. So I completely agree with what you said with where creative ideas are just remixes of other ideas presented in a new way. So yeah, I agree and disagree with that point.
Fraser, are there any new career paths emerging because of AI that you think we should explore? He's muted.
I was trying to unmute myself. I'm going to stay unmuted. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, of course. Are there any new career paths emerging because of AI that you think we should explore?
I think with any new piece of technology or new kind of era and kind of the world, because we're basically going into the AI generation, aren't we? That's where we're moving forward. That's kind of, it's encompassing that the world that we live in, and we've got to learn to work with it rather than necessarily work against it, as long as we're doing everything ethically. And just like when automation and robotics came into play and people complained about that they would be losing jobs because like people used to put the tops of on toothpaste. Yes, they disappeared, but actually so many more jobs did come out of it. I don't know what jobs are going to be there, but there's always going, in terms of creative careers, from a kind of theatre point of view, AI cannot make someone on a stage. AI cannot be a director. It simply can't do those things. From a film standpoint, I know there's a lot of things that that kind of the controversy around AI being used to kind of increase the kind of crowd scenes or actors in scenes. And I think that'll end up being almost a two-pronged approach with kind of almost AI film and almost authentic filmmaking as well. There will be new jobs. I don't know what they are, but I think we've got to kind of roll with it and kind of be open to what AI can do in terms of our creative careers, and actually be surprised by what doors are opened from it. And like for you guys as young people as well, is that you're going to be at the forefront of that because you're growing up with AI as a thing, and we're all learning at the same rate as you. So that's really interesting in terms of what's going to happen in terms of those careers. I'm not sure how well I answered your question because I don't know what job roles they're going to be, but there are going to be new job roles.
Right. Thank you so much. Because obviously, as someone who wanted to pursue acting, I also had worries if they could take over it. So hearing that they can't, I think it's very reassuring.
Yeah, and I was listening to an actor, I forgot who it was, actually have the same question probed to them. And ultimately, AI will not be able to replace the raw emotion that a human and an actor brings out on screen or on stage. It will never be able to have that kind of level of authenticity. And I think there's a certain audiences want to see authenticity, and I think it will come down to obviously labels on like this is an AI generated film, and then the consumer can decide whether they want to bring that in or not.
Yeah, and also just to add what Fraser said as well. I mean, the thing about what makes a good movie, special performances, and Fraser, you know this as much as I do as well, is the fact that a lot of it sometimes is not what the actor says, but it's in the eyes. And there's a level of emotion that only humans can do that. It's an instinct, it's a gut instinct, it's the little nuances that an actor does with with the face that AI can't do it. If you look at the existing AI stuff at the moment, even though it's very, very impressive that what can be done at the moment, and it's really getting faster and faster. Well, we're not even talking months here, we're talking weeks, right? But there's still something that we have photorealistic imagery, and it will get even more photorealistic, but the emotion isn't going to be there because it doesn't matter how much data servers or computational power there is, there's nothing that could compete with the trillions of neurons that goes in the human brain to present that emotion. So I think actors are safe. Yes.
I did want to actually raise on that point. There is a organization called SAG-AFTRA, I think
Yes.
I pronounced that
Union.
correctly. Yes, they're going on strike currently because this is against all of the voice acting stuff because now we have AI producing voice acting, taking people's clips and producing clips from people who didn't give them permission. So voice acting as a form of acting is currently at risk because people are using those for games and movies and animations where they would have hired someone beforehand, but they're not. So this is already happening. I'm going to take the opposite direction here. It's gotten so far already, it will probably get a lot further pretty quickly, and who knows what that will turn up to be. in all different types of entertainment. I think it will affect all types of entertainment. It's just how we approach it and how we use it as a tool.
I think the legal side, Amy, I
Yeah.
think that's the big thing. That's one of the reasons why they're going on strike because, like you said, it's happening, and as soon as financiers, producers, and the people that pay to get stuff made, and they're always trying to find the cheapest way to make something, right? I mean,
Exactly.
that
They
is
don't necessarily care about the emotion too much,
right,
maybe.
right,
They want
exactly.
something cheap, and
Yeah,
AI is cheap.
exactly. But to protect the actors, I think that what's going through is like there's going to be new things in their contract. So every actor gets a contract, and in there says how many hours you work, what you're going to get paid. The deal, right? It's the deal, which is what the actors' agents fight hard for. A lot of the agents fight hard for actors to get a good trailer, to get some good food, and per diem, which is extra money you get for being an actor on set and stuff. But also, it's going to be another line now saying that I do or do not give permission for my voice to be reused. And the thing is, though, from a director's point of view, when I get a directing contract, it also says at the bottom of my contract, depending if I've got a good deal or not, the deal I usually have is like, if there's a sequel to the movie that I'm directed, then I get first refusal right, which means that I get asked if I want to direct it or not, depending on my schedule. And I think it's going to be a similar thing with actors. We're like, you're going to perform this character in this movie or this video game or whatever entertainment using voices. And if we decide to make a sequel, we want to reuse your voice, then we should be able to pay a license fee or rehire you or something. And I think that's what this strike is about, is make sure that that is solidified because, like you
Mm,
said, Amy, it's not going away, but we need some level of protection for the actors, for sure.
exactly. Yes. Yes.
And I think some of that, and obviously we're hearing some stuff in the news at the moment in terms of government level, in terms of policy and AI. And I think it's a watch this space to see how they take action, because they're saying they want the UK to be this big AI superpower and it leading the way. But actually with that, obviously it's all the intellectual property side of things from obviously not just like film and actors, but actually creatives as a whole. So yeah, I think it's a watch this space and fingers crossed they protect those on the ground level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amy, do you think that AI will make it harder for talent to stand out?
Um, I think it already is making it more difficult for talent to stand out, especially for people starting off their careers and learning new things. Because AI can be used as a tool for learning new things, which is great, but sometimes people can abuse that and they don't actually learn they don't actually learn those skills. They rely on AI too much. So this might be for programming, for example, they might ask the AI tool to generate code for them, and they don't properly understand what the code they're generating is about. We've seen loads of stuff like this on Reddit where people are like, my code base is too big. I don't know how to proceed with the project anymore because the AI isn't helping me out how it's supposed to. So with new talent and learning new skills, I definitely think it would affect them in a negative way unless they're able to approach learning in a more open way using AI as a tool and understanding it is a tool. Sorry, can you ask the question again? I don't think I answered it.
You did. It was if you think AI would make it harder for talent to stand out.
Yeah, so I think it would make it harder to distinguish in the beginning stages and hiring stages whether a person has learned these skills through creating things and using AI as a tool or just leaning on AI and making AI do everything until they get to the interview stage and things get a bit more difficult.
That's my biggest nightmare. Like, someone that runs a studio and I'm constantly hiring, developers, artists, animators. I'm now getting portfolios that come in like for environment artists, right? So people that build the environments in the game. And I get it. And I can instantly see when something is generative AI, especially at a mid journey, because there's a certain look currently, a lot of
Yeah,
these,
yeah.
right? It's got that slightly neon-y, shiny, plasticky kind of vibe,
It's
right?
the exact same with code. Like there's way too many comments which
Oh,
explain the
right.
simplest things which don't need
No.
documentation. So
Oh, wow.
sometimes you can tell when code has been AI generated.
Well, there you go. I didn't know about the code. Wow, that's interesting. Like, wow. So there you go. So that is for me, like, as an employee, it becomes a nightmare because then I have to rely on the interview stage. And a lot of times I ask the artist to like do a breakdown, like, prepare a breakdown. So when we're doing a Zoom interview, they can break down their Photoshop layers. And I like to see what, and also I like to understand when I hire an artist, it isn't necessarily about the work itself. Yes, the work is what gets the interview, but what really gets the job really is what is their thought process in making that 3D character? What were the issues
Exactly.
you can, right? Because it's problem solving.
Yeah.
And if you're relying on AI, and you said it already, Amy, like the AI is not going to help you understand the code or problem solve. It's just going to say, here's what you asked. Blah, there
Yeah,
you
yeah, you're not going to learn as much as
right.
approaching the problem directly and going through all of the iterative errors and solving those errors and learning through trial and error.
Yes. Yes.
I would argue then that because of the things you've just said, actually, the way to stand out is to be yourself and to do, like we all probably have done, put the work in at the ground level and that skills basis. So actually, you're standing out by not relying on AI, and
Mm.
you're actually focusing on the skills that are needed for that industry. And as you said, I think it's an understanding of what AI can do, but also understanding of its faults so that you can use it to benefit yourself and
Yeah,
not just kind of
Yeah.
basically not, it's not the answer to everything. And that's where I think we're learning at the moment, isn't it? Is what can it be used for, and what is it useful for, versus actually that's not useful at all. I know in Bristol there was actually a project at Watershed, which is a cinema and media centre in Bristol, and they had a project all about kind of the human being better than AI, and kind of, and I know one of them was all about trying to get instructions from ChatGPT to basically make the worst model car in history. And so it's like, and kind of like understanding its faults creatively to then so that you can move forward positively.
yeah,
But also like from the visual effects, right? So obviously with visual effects, every movie has visual effects, right? Whether it's a Marvel film, Star Wars, or even a rom-com, right? Usually things like, and I think Fraser, you mentioned things like crowd replication, right? And that's a big, very, very tedious thing. Like when I worked in visual effects, one of my first job was cutting out someone out of a frame. There was 24 frames in a second of footage. And if you got a 3 minute footage where you can do the maths, there's a lot of frames. And I had to cut them all out. And it was boring. It was horrid. It was tedious. I wanted to do the cool stuff. I wanted to do the explosions. But as a junior, that's how you start off in visual effects.
mm,
Now, you don't need to be doing the boring roto work. You can get AI to analyze the frame, something called machine learning. It analyzes and it does the roto for you. And then you can now focus on compositing, which is the art of putting a shot together. So there are things that can help speed up the process so that you can focus being creative. Things like tracking, right? So if a camera's moving around and you got a dragon, a CGI dragon, and the camera's moving, that dragon's going to track with the footage, right? And usually that takes a lot of work. You got to have things like lens charts, distortion, you got to track it. It's very tedious when now AI can analyze that so much quicker than us, allowing us to be more focused on making a shot good. So
yeah.
that's using AI as a tool. It's not using it to create images. It's helping me part of my job to get to that final thing.
Yeah, like as you mentioned, it's the repetitive tasks which are really
Yeah,
tedious and boring, which is the task that we want AI to do. The really, really boring stuff that no one wants to do, so we can get
exactly.
onto the fun, creative stuff. But
Yeah,
instead, it feels like the other way around. AI is taking all the fun jobs, and then
right.
we're doing all the boring stuff still.
Yes.
Right. So our next question is, how do you think AI will shape the creative industry in the next 10 years?
It's a crystal ball moment.
Well, I think um, I hope some ethics will be like some laws and stuff will come in place that allow us to use AI tools in a safe way that doesn't steal other people's work. And if that is the case, I'm sure more creative industries will start using AI as a tool within production, to hopefully help stop repetitive tasks so people can do the creative stuff that they enjoy. Um, that's my hope.
Yeah, I mean, 10 years is a long time. I mean, if you
Yeah.
think about it, right? Like AI is accelerating. Like when I first saw some of the early tests of Sora, which is this other, or Wonder Dynamics, right, which is another AI tool, and that was like what, 2 years ago, and I'm like, that looks okay. And then I see it like last week, I'm like, holy moly, that looks insanely good. And so I think it's accelerating in a much faster pace than we can imagine. And exactly what Amy said, I think the big thing people are going to focus is not about how good to make the images in AI now. Technologically, we know this thing is going to get better and better. We know, right? So now the focus is how do we make this work in an industry? How do we make it work for young people like yourself when you are ready to go into a work that you know clearly this is what I'm going to use AI for. It's going to be part of my tool set. I don't need to worry about being replaced as an actor. I don't need to be worried about replaced being an artist. You know that's part of your tool set. And you got to remember, guys, like way before our time, there wasn't any computers. That people were printing newspapers. Before that, like Fraser said about robotics, right? They used to have hordes of people working in factories doing all this work, and they all got replaced by robotics. And computers came in that took over publishing. Some crazy guy or girl said, hey, we're going to be watching TV via our computer screens or maybe smaller devices. Everyone's like, you're crazy. We do that today with Netflix and Disney and so on, right? So it's going to happen. And I think the thing is that we just got to be ahead of it. And by being ahead of it is keeping your finger on the pulse, reading about it, understanding about AI, looking not just at how cool AI is, but look at stuff like, how's that going to affect me? And like Amy said, ethics. As human beings, we have a moral and ethic code, right? Which is to do the right thing, right? Especially as creatives. And you also got to remember any type of creative work, whether you're acting, music, architecture, anything, it is very much community based, meaning you just need to go on LinkedIn and see how everyone's somehow connected to everyone, right? So I think that is the big thing. I'm hoping it's going to be less than 10 years. I'm hoping like within next year, there is some kind of laws put in place.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why that SAG-AFTRA strike is happening, right? The union strike, because they need to start thinking about it. And I think also by that time, there's going to be divisions of law focus on AI. Just like you have law on real estate, just like you have law on crime and all the various laws, right? IP law and so on. I think there's going to be a specific law about AI. And there's going to be a new set of lawyers, a new set of solicitors that's going to be focused on that because it is going to be very much an integral part of our life. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I'm going to second kind of what has been said regarding the ethics and the laws and the policies over the next year that needs to be put in place just to protect everybody, actually protect the user just as much as protecting the kind of the industry and the sector. I also actually think that it will be more heavily integrated within education, and I think that will hopefully be a bit of a game changer in terms of how it's taught and how it then is integrated into curriculum and mainly in the creative curriculum as well. And I think some of the stuff like what you were saying about earlier about almost spotting it when it's not working well. And so I think that will happen. I reckon that will happen in 4 years' time, is that it'll be fully integrated into curriculum, because it's got to be, because we're finding within the education sector now that it's already and actually the students from the school will be able to say, how much is AI spoken about at the moment in education within your subject areas?
A lot, because I study interactive media, so maybe when we're creating a website or we need a new format, we might even ask AI for inspiration on how to create a website or how we should lay it out. And we also do client briefs, so make websites for other clients. So maybe we might use AI to find pictures that we can integrate into our websites for our clients.
Yeah, I think we use in drama as well. So for our Companion 3, for example, our teacher showed us this website, and you put what you want the song to be about, and then AI generates a song that you can then use to do a Brechtian style piece of art.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Wow. It sounds like it's fully integrated already then.
Yeah, but I think it probably will go to the next extent, so when it's almost in examination, But It's interesting. It's interesting. And I think what you said has about we've just got to be ahead of it and in control of it and not let it control.
Yeah.
And actually, I think those of us that are kind of on the ground, so to speak, as well, that aren't necessarily at the big level, the likes of like Netflix, Disney, all of that stuff, and like kind of the huge corporations, we've got to kind of control it ourselves and know what works at our level, to be ethical and seemingly, hopefully, creative as well. As you said, to put our time in the best spaces possible.
Yeah.
Fraser, if you were starting your creative career today, do you think you would approach it differently? And if you would, how would you approach it differently?
What, because of AI?
Yeah.
Okay. I would say that the way I am approaching my career now is very much influenced on AI. And whether that be due to my kind of, I've got a kind of fascination with it in terms of like what, almost around like what it is as a thing creatively. So in terms of like what I'm wanting to put out into the world, if I'm also thinking about kind of my immersive kind of work, because it's something that's very much within our zeitgeist at the moment and it's around us, creatively, I'm interested in it. In terms of my approach, I think I would probably fall into that awful mistake of using it too much. And so I would have to be really careful. And my advice would be is to kind of use it almost as a last resort, because you are going to kind of soak up so much creativity and skills through other means that you don't always want to take the easy route, because the easy route isn't always the most beneficial creatively and for your work and for you as a human. So like I would say I would need to tell myself to just slow down with it. And I would approach things, I would actually find it really interesting in terms of how it's being used elsewhere and how that kind of interdisciplinary aspect of my work, for example, how it is being used in the likes of games and coding and all of the, even how it's used in architecture, and how that could then feed into my creative practice as a theatre and film director as well. So I think I would use it to kind of understand more about other industries.
I think also if you look at some of the AI generative videos that are coming out at the moment, right? There's a lot of them that just, I mean, we all know how generative AI works, right? It's text prompts, right? It's what you feed it to the AI. It can only generate what you feed it, right? It can only go out and look for stuff based on what you feed it. So there are a lot of people, for example, want to make AI films, right? Let's look at AI films. And you look at AI films and it looks wrong and it feels wrong. And the reason why it looks and feels wrong because the people that are typing the text prompts, they don't necessarily understand, well, the cinematography, how to frame a shot, composition, all of those things, right? And then you get someone that has made a movie or has worked in cinematography, and the text prompts they put in are very different to someone that hasn't worked in the industry. And then you see the results that that experienced filmmaker has put in. The images look way better. And then you start to realize, oh, so you still have to go back to the basics of understanding the fundamentals of cinematography, framing, lighting, composition. And to do that, you can't rely on AI for that because AI is only going to take what you do. So I always tell everyone, like, are you all familiar with Unreal Engine? The game engine used for Fortnite and stuff. Well, my biggest mistake was when I started playing with Unreal, I was making the camera fly everywhere. I was like, I can move the camera everywhere. I can do some really cool stuff. And I was doing some crazy stuff. And I remember showing it to people, and people was like, I don't know what I'm watching here because it's like a drone that's gone crazy. It's like it doesn't feel like a movie. And whenever you watch something, like when you watch something like a low budget film, a badly low budget film, and a good low budget film, right? Because there's some amazing low budget films. The really good ones, they keep it simple and they still go back to basic cinematography. Like you have your wide shot where there's two people talking, then you have a close up, then you have the over shoulder. You have this line here that you don't cross called the 180 rule. These are educational things in film that's been going way back in the 1900s and still works today because we know what feels right. And I feel like if you're an experienced person, if I was starting my career today and I wanted to make films in AI, And because I love cinema so much, I understand when I watch a film that that is what makes a good film. I will go back and understand cinema and then utilize that in AI. That's how I would do my career today.
Absolutely. And I think I kind of agree, but on the code side of things,
Uh-huh.
so I would go back, well, if today I were to start my career, I would learn more about fundamentals and try and use AI as a last resort. Because it does seem like it can answer all your questions and it makes everything easy. But yeah, that could mean you don't maybe you don't learn as much. So definitely use AI as a last resort, or maybe try and lean into AI and learn about how all of the algorithms work. So I could use that as to my advantage in my career. Who knows? We don't know where AI is going to end up. So I'm quite happy where I am at the moment.
I think there's
I'm
something
also going to add in. Oh, sorry, Karina.
Oh, sorry, no, you go.
I would also add into that is that AI cannot give those core and transferable skills of communication, teamwork, leadership, creative problem solving, actually on a kind of really kind of basic level, which is what the kind of World Economic Forum is saying is what actually there's a spike in. And so in terms of what humans bring to the table is that I'm just going to like do a big shout out to those skills that actually what makes us human and what makes us exciting and actually what makes us creatives as well.
Do we have time for any more questions, or should we wrap it up?
I think we have time for more questions.
Let's do one more. Let's do it.
Let's do one more. Yeah, you guys are awesome.
Lots of time for more questions. So carry on if you want, guys. Honestly, it's a very interesting topic. I love this.
Well, I think this is a question for everyone. What advice do you have for young creatives who feel anxious about AI taking over?
All right, well, I'll start off on this one. So, I think it's, as we discussed, AI will be utilized in an ethical way in the near future, we hope, and laws will be put in place. So, the advice I would give is to not rely on it too heavily to do everything and learn fundamentals that you need. Try and use it as a learning tool and not a crutch to answer all your questions.
Yeah, I 100% echo what Amy just said there. I think, yeah, that's exactly what I would say.
Yeah, I would say remember what makes you as a creative. And as I say, it's like you use it and explore a bit. And actually, I'm going to say try and break it. Try and break it. Actually, that's the way to kind of learn about it. Like try and make it do the wrong thing. And then, but first and foremost, focus on yourself as a creative and an artist, because going back to that very first question is that it's what you bring to the table that makes it exciting, makes your work exciting. And yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point, breaking things. In fact, some of the best art is where you kind of break the rules. But in order to break the rules, you need to know the rules, right? So that's the thing. Like, there's loads of filmmaking rules where people cross the line or they do dynamic shots and even they do it in storytelling a lot of times, right? They do the most wackiest things, right? But you got to understand what you're breaking in order for it to work. And when you do break the rules and it's subversive, for example, then you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. That's memorable, right? And that becomes art. So definitely what Fraser's saying, like, experiment, break. I mean, again, that's what makes us human, right? It's a curiosity, right? We're sending probes out into space since the 50s. We're deep sea exploring. We're curious creatures, but we're also social creatures as well, right? So I think lean into that and then make AI work for you on that point. Yeah.
I was also adding to that as well is that remember that some of the most exciting work can come from limitations. And so actually bearing that in mind is that, yes, AI might be able to give you everything, give you ideas and do all of that stuff. It might be able to do the work for you. But actually what happens when you take all that away. And it comes like, if you could go down to like that indie filmmaking conversation that we were just having, and like, I know from a theatre standpoint, it's like you can have the biggest budget in the world and you have things flying in, like you can have someone flying, but actually what happens when you can't have someone fly, and what do we then do to actually bring out this kind of curiosity and creativity? And you might work with different people, work with a sound artist, you might work with lighting, and actually that is more exciting because you're collaborating as well.
That's actually a very good point, Fraser. You know, I don't know if you guys ever seen like the original Star Wars, but like, you know, like George Lucas who made the original Star Wars, not the Disney ones, the original Star Wars. And there's this scene in the desert where got this big, massive sand crawler, and it's huge, and everyone's really tiny. I remember when I was a kid, I'm like, how did they do that? Did they build a massive sand crawler? No, they did not. They were limited with budget. Even Star Wars back then was limited, right? Even as a big science fiction film, what they did was they built a miniature like this size, and they positioned it in a way, and they positioned the camera in a way, and it's called forced perspective. It's an optical illusion. Didn't cost anything to do apart from just really being smart how you place the camera and how you distance the object. Now they would never come up with that idea, right? Same, there's another idea where if you watch Star Wars again, and they do it in all the films these days, right? Where you look at a corridor and the corridor looks like it's going down forever. And you're like, did they build this massive long corridor? No, they didn't. They basically put mirrors on either side. So when you shoot it, it looks like that mirror is reflecting that mirror, and it makes the corridors look massive. Again, it's because of the indie low budget restriction that you have forces you to come up with better ideas. So sometimes it's good to have limitations.
I absolutely agree with that, because there's a thing in games called game jams where
Oh
you have to make a
yeah.
game based off of a theme or a
Yeah.
limitation. And some of the greatest games have come out of game jams, and some have even been expanded and published and are well known today. So yeah, limitations are great.
Yeah.
Fraser, earlier you brought up labeling AI generated content differently. Do you think AI generated content should be labeled differently from human content?
Absolutely.
Definitely. Obviously, we're starting to see it, like things like on Instagram, and there's now a tick box for it. And actually, I applied for the BFI Short Film Fund, and actually on that application, it actually had a tick box for have you used AI in doing this application. And I think it's important. And I think what's important is for people just to be honest about it. I don't think it means you're any less of a human being or a creative that you have, or you've used it in a different way. Like even in this conversation, I was just thinking, oh wow, actually I could use AI to do my storyboard, because actually like I'm awful at drawing, and actually that might actually be really helpful. I might try that as a tool. Is that going to work for me? But yeah, definitely needs to be labeled. It's the classic fake news thing.
Yes.
We just need to know if something is real or not. There's a video that's going around at the moment, isn't there, of like a whale that's eating a boat, and it's obviously AI generated. But if that was just put out there and without its labeling that, people actually think that that's real.
Oh, that really reminds me of some of the stuff you see on Facebook these days with the happy birthday cake posts and all of the older people on Facebook commenting on it thinking it's real.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think the older people are the ones that really get sucked into it massively, right? And I even saw like there was like CCTV footage done last year of like Trump walking into the store and like, you know, pointing a gun at people. You're like, wait, what? But anyone looking at that at a glance, I mean, I had to double take. I'm like, wait, what? And fake news becomes a problem. And you got to think it isn't just AI. That's the same thing with any type of technology, right? You know, like even things like propulsion technology and nuclear physics. Nuclear could be a great thing for powering things, but they also use it for bombs back in the day, right? So, and you're going to find every cool piece of technology, there's always going to find an evil side to it. And I think labeling becomes a very important part. And also, I think like if we're talking about the 10 years thing, like in 10 years time, I'm hoping, and I think most people will be able to get their eyes trained. They'll be able to pick out what is AI, what isn't, just because of the nuances. But at the same time, if you're not trained creatively to pick out these things, it can be a bit shocking. So I think labeling becomes important. But Fraser, the BFI thing is interesting because like, do you think people actually would be honest and tick like, yeah, I use AI? Or I don't think they would they?
I don't think they would. And it's also, I think it's then like what is that information being used for? Is it just out of curiosity, or is it actually, because certainly if it's on an application level, which you know that we're applying for funding bids all the time as
Right.
and we're trying to get investors, and we're trying to even like just making work, you know what, it's and I think because AI is seen as this thing, and rightfully so, is it's like actually like people question it. I think on an application level or funding bid level, people would see it as a negative.
Right.
And so yeah, I don't think they would do. But it'd be interesting. I'd love to know.
Yeah, same.
Right, well, thank you so much to everyone. I think that's all our questions that we have time for. So,
Oh, brilliant. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, you two.